I wake up at dawn. In the twilight, I put my makeup on, and I'm alright, like I just got born with the sunrise. Oh, today I'm someone new. Today I'm not me. I never broke in two. Today I'm set free. I'm done with all the rules and how it should be.
August 26, 2020. The date marks the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, guaranteeing and protecting women's constitutional right to vote. However, as we won our right to be heard, we learned over the last 100 years that winning respect and equality in our homes, our work, and in society would be more difficult. Cox Communications, Cox Media, and Cox Business honor the 72-year struggle to gain the vote and the ongoing 100-year struggle to gain acceptance as equals and as leaders. Today, we bring together several women who have dealt with these struggles and have broke through the barriers to show how women can be, teach, and inspire powerful leaders. Welcome to the Women's Equality Day Forum. Here's your host and Vice President of Cox Media Kansas and Arkansas, Marianne Balbo.
Welcome. Hello, everybody. I want to thank everyone here today for joining us in celebrating Women's Equality Day 2020 with Cox Communications. So, are you ready for some girl power? I hope so. Get ready. My name is Marianne Balbo, and I'm the Vice President of Cox Media Kansas and Arkansas. I'm also a proud executive advisor for women in cable telecommunications, lovingly known as WICT. And I want to thank our WICT team for your partnership today and allowing us to stream live on your Facebook page and your YouTube channel. And I also want to thank our KSAR Cox Media team who reimagined this event. It was originally scheduled in March to celebrate International Women's Day. 2 days before the event, the flowers were in place, the food was being prepared, and all the details were in order, and we had to cancel due to COVID. This resilient team put disappointment behind them and pledged to reschedule and make it bigger and better. And that's exactly what they've done. Today's event is even more than we could have imagined in March. So kudos to the Cox Media KSAR team. You know who you are. This year, we celebrate the 100th anniversary of women's right to vote. Imagine that, just 100 years ago, women didn't have a real voice in our society. 40 years later, women were liberated from customary gender roles and finally had a voice in their careers. But even in the early 2000s, it was hard for women to have a voice in the direction of the organizations in which they worked and to which they dedicated most of their lives. But through the hard work, sacrifice, and tenacity of women around the country and the world, times have changed. The way women were thought of in the home, in the workplace, and in government has started to shift. Today, more and more women are rising into positions of leadership and influence. And I have so much hope for not only women of today, but also for all those little girls, like my own little 7-year-old Maxine, who is also known as Princess Warrior, who are watching us all today as we overcome still so many challenges. Imagine where we could be in another 20, 60, even 100 years from now. So today, I'm really excited. We're going to hear from 6 magnificent women who have worked hard to make an impact in their workplace, their family, and their community. But to kick things off first, we want to hear from 2 amazing organizations. Near and dear to my heart is Dress for Success. This organization empowers women to achieve economic independence by providing a network of support, professional attire, and the tools needed to thrive in work and in life. Here's Executive Director of Dress for Success in Wichita, Kara Kaufman.
Hi, my name is Kara Kaufman, and I am the Executive Director of Dress for Success Wichita. We have been serving our community for over 20 years, helping women join the workforce and get back into the workforce. We do this by providing them with the development tools that they need to retain their job, as well as the financial tools that they'll need to continue being successful throughout their life. We also provide professional attire, which will help them land a job and then fully represent themselves once they get into that job. We are going to have our very first ever virtual Inspire Ball this year on November 7th, and we hope to have you join us as we celebrate the confidence we have inspired into these women throughout this past year. Please visit our website, wichita.dressforsuccess.org, and find out more about how you can get involved with us and how you can donate. Thank you, guys.
I had lost everything, prior relationships and just other things. I've just lost everything. I needed everything, from clothes to shoes to, I couldn't believe that they clothed you with everything, and haircut. And even though I was working, I still didn't make enough money to get these kinds of things. And I felt support, That was a lot of it. I felt support, and they welcome you in, and they just, they cater to you, basically. They cater. I'm just like in awe, like, why are they doing this for us? And I didn't have very much self-esteem as I started to come. I had low self-esteem. It just, everything about it, just everybody was pretty awesome and supportive. My best experience would be the day that I had an interview. I had an interview at a bank. I've been praying for years to work at a bank. And one of the girls here, Libby, said, well, I'll come an hour early just to help you get ready. I was like, that lady's gonna come an hour early just to help me? So we came in here. She was getting me ready with everything. I felt like a queen that day. I felt like a queen. Everything went perfect. The day could not have gone any more perfect. Everything that I tried on, that she was picking out for me, fit. That don't happen. I went to the interview. The interview went perfect. I didn't get that position, but I got the bank position, and it came at the perfect time. I've just never had a more perfect day as that day. Libby impacted that day by, first of all, telling me that she would be here an hour early. That right there already touched my heart. She was calm, and she was amazing that day with everything that she had helped me with. The first time I put on my new clothes, I felt amazing, and I felt good about myself. When I left to the interview that morning, it's gonna make me cry, because all I could see was Libby's smiling face. Everything, she was confident in everything that she did that day. And that's the confidence that we want. And like I said, it was a blessed day, and she blessed my life that day. And it blessed my heart, my life, and I'm forever grateful. I want to thank everybody that has participated in this organization, and thank you for blessing my life and making a difference in my life, because it has, and I'm so thankful.
Wow, how inspiring. Women supporting women and instilling confidence. Wow. Thanks, Kara. Now let's hear a message from another organization that is near and dear to my heart, literally, the American Heart Association. Heather Smart is a development director of their Go Red for Women initiative in Wichita, and she joins us now.
Hello, my name is Heather Smart, Development Director with the American Heart Association. Thank you for inviting me into your home today to share a message with you on our work. With my job, I work to raise critical funds and awareness in Wichita to create healthier communities. As an organization, we're working to be a relentless force for a world of longer, healthier lives. We're committed to ensuring everyone can enjoy more years, focusing on people and things most meaningful to them. One key issue we work to address is women's health. 1 in 3 women are impacted by heart disease, yet 80% of cardiovascular disease can be prevented. During this pandemic, we're reminded of a few things. Women, especially women of color, are at an increased risk of COVID-19. Doctors also need to know more about COVID-19 and how it affects women, especially in research. This, in addition to so much more, is what the American Heart Association and its signature Go Red for Women movement fights for. We fight to accelerate science to ensure all women are aware and equipped with support and resources needed to fight our leading cause of death. You can help the American Heart Association by joining our local Go Red for Women movement as an executive leader, volunteering your time and talents to help us create solutions in our community around bettering women's health. This far, the American Heart Association has invested $2.5 million to investigate cardiovascular disease implications on COVID-19. We're also teaching hospitals and communities how to safely and effectively administer CPR during this pandemic. And lastly, we're advocating for policies that ensure families have access to care, plus so much more. We know the next breakthrough is out there, but it depends on you. I also personally invite you to join alongside other community leaders on September 24th from 12 to 1 for our digital Ladies' Day In luncheon. While we can't gather in person this year, we'll gather and provide a platform for survivors to share their stories, women to advocate on behalf of themselves, and continue creating a network for women who know they're not alone when it comes to heart disease and stroke. To RSVP or to get involved as an executive leader, visit us at heart.org/WichitaGoRed. Thank you and enjoy today.
What would I do if I had more time?
Wow. If I had more time, I'd call my grandma back. I miss her.
I'd go straight to the studio and dance my little heart out.
I would take up the guitar again because I have always wanted to be a rock star.
I would love to spend more time laughing.
I'd empower women to move.
I would do more of what I want to do and less of what I have to do.
If I had more time, I'd give it all to her.
If I had more time.
If I had more time.
If I had more time.
In 2008, at the age of 37, I suffered a heart attack. And I never saw it coming.
At 10, I was diagnosed with dilated cardiomyopathy. And at 22, I had a heart transplant.
Thanks to research funded by the American Heart Association,
so many of us have been given more time.
More time with our families, more time with our dreams, and more time to accomplish the things that cardiovascular disease tried to take from us.
And we're not going anywhere.
We'd like to thank both Dress for Success and the American Heart Association for their tireless work at helping women stay healthy as well as achieve and succeed. So, some housekeeping. Who likes to win a free t-shirt? I know I do. It's become really my uniform working from home, right? Well, after today's event, we'll be sending out a survey for your feedback. And for anyone who completes the survey, we'll randomly select 20 individuals to receive a Girls to the Front t-shirt provided by Evie and Alec, which is based here in Wichita and owned by Leslie Bruce. Leslie personally designs all her shirts with messages of faith, positivity, and humor. Her mission is spreading joy, inspiring individuality, and connecting people. We'd like to thank Leslie for her wonderful contribution to our event today. Definitely girl power all around. So, diversity and inclusion is always on all of our minds. And as of recently, even more so. At Cox, we embrace diversity and inclusion in our workplace every day. We understand that being a champion of diverse genders, ethnicities, personalities, and cultures, it brings together a wide array of perspectives and develops a full spectrum of thought and innovation. It unleashes the potential of our people and our company while creating a culture that continues to challenge the status quo. It's a way of thinking that can benefit any one person, company, or community. It can be the high tide that raises all ships. So now I want to introduce to you a woman who has accomplished so much in her life and in her community, Janetta Everett. She's been with Delta Dental since 1987 and currently serves as the Vice President of Professional Relations. She's also the current Madam Chair of the Wichita Regional Chamber of Commerce, and she is the first African-American woman to hold that position. She is very involved in the community and serves on several boards, including the Greater Wichita Partnership, Kansas Health Foundation, Wesley Hospital, WSU National Advisory Council, and the WSU Foundation. She's also on my personal board of directors as a confidant and a coach. Janetta has been honored with many awards, including the WSU Distinguished Alumni Recognition Award, the Urban League Whitney M. Young Leadership Award, and the Heartland Black Chamber Civic Leadership Award, among many others. She's married to her sweetheart, Victor Everett, a retired State Farm agent, and they're the proud parents of 5 sons. You heard that right, 5 sons and 8 grandchildren. Unfortunately, Janetta couldn't be here today for the event, but I had a chance last week to sit down and speak with her, so let's take a look. It is such an honor today to be talking to Janetta. Hi, Janetta.
Hello.
So great to see you. Thank you for joining us during this very, very special time and sharing some of your insight with our viewers. So thank you, Janetta.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. There are so many firsts in front of your name. I couldn't even list them all. I was thinking the other evening, okay, she is the first African-American woman to ever attend dental hygienist school at Wichita State University, right?
That's correct.
The first African-American woman to be the chair of the Wichita Chamber, Madame Chair. Is that what they call you, Madame?
Yes, ma'am. That's correct.
Yes. And I believe you're a first generation student in your family, correct?
That is correct as well.
And I know there's a whole long list of other firsts, but I have to ask you, being a ceiling breaker and trailblazer, there's so much and such a great story, but could you tell us a little bit about some of the obstacles in being first that you had to overcome and how it shaped you into who you are today? Because we know there's a lot of other women out there who are working to be first and would love to be able to gain some insight from you.
Well, it's interesting because of some of those firsts that you mentioned, particularly like the one being the first African-American to graduate from Wichita State's dental hygiene program. At that time, I wasn't aware that I was the first. In fact, it was a fact that I didn't find out about until later when I was in practice. However, it allowed me to never have to look for a job in dental hygiene. For whatever reason, particularly the African-American men, the dentists were coming after me, contacting me saying, when you graduate, you can come work here. And I'm like, why are these people coming after me? To find out much later that they were happy to hear that not only were there was the first African-American to graduate from the college, but in the state of Kansas, there were no other African-American dental hygienists in the state. Yeah, so that was awesome. With that that allowed me to continue through my journey of trying to see where I could take and use that hygiene degree even further after having 5 sons and deciding that I probably wanted to do something. I was recruited by Delta Dental, and that allowed me to go into corporate America. And that's when everything opened up as it relates to obstacles. It seemed like everything was smooth, but I got there and my job at Delta was to be over professional relations. I started in customer service.
Oh, wow.
Only like there for 3 months, moved into professional relations, and I was a one-woman show. So the good thing about that, it allowed me to be able to build this entire program. And only 7 years later was I named the vice president. So it allowed me to know that I think I had a natural ability to be a leader. From starting a Black Student Union program at Butler's Community College. I also was in Leadership Kansas. I was elected an officer. So I had the natural ability. Being in corporate America allowed me then to use that talent, but I know I needed more leadership, formal leadership training. But the obstacle, the biggest one, if you can imagine, a Black female hygienist walking into a probably male-dominated, predominantly white dental profession, and I am the one who kind of says, here's what you have to do. It wasn't that well received.
I was going to say, how'd that go? And what was the response you got? And what was your response?
Well, for the most part, I think they knew that I kind of was in charge of their contract. So they kind of walked lightly. However, I love a challenge. I am a person that if you challenge me, I love to turn hate into love. And where some of the dentists would actually ask me, what's your credentials? Or I don't want you to come, go get somebody else and let them come in. But I had a very good CEO who was very supportive, who was a white male, who clearly said, it's her job, she's coming in, or it's your contract. So it was helpful to have a male mentor who happened to be of a different race to help me out, but I wanted to do it myself. And Marianne, that's kind of what I think I challenged myself to do, is to figure out how to get through those barriers, not depend on somebody else, and learn how to do it myself.
So find your own confidence, know you've got to do it yourself, but also find some others who can be advocates for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and not be, prohibited by who they are, what they look like, and what role they have. Find an advocate. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. You have to. And for those of us who believe we don't need anybody, and for those of us who sometimes feel like that you have to have that, I'm a female and I can only use a female, just know that having those male mentors, that does mean a lot, and you need to learn from them and take advantage of those opportunities. I find myself, anytime I'm in the only one in the room, take full advantage of that. And there's something they call, there's a bias, a similarity bias. You have to learn to get away from the similarity biases and go to someone else. That's basically walking in the room, going to someone who looks like you, thinks like you, acts like you. Instead, go quite the opposite. That's just one of the things that I'm learning. And I speak truth. My actions are going to follow my words.
Yeah, that's how you learn, by learning from those who are different from you.
Absolutely.
My dad would always say, it'd be a boring world if we were all the same, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. Although I wouldn't mind being like you, Marianne. I
want to be like you. You're my role model.
Well, thank you.
So you talk a lot about being intentional with your actions and being mindful of who's sitting at the table, who's missing. So along that same line, talk to me a little bit about how you've been able to be so intentional in embracing others to make sure that there is a diverse group of folks with diverse thinking, so you can get to really the best solution as we can learn from each other.
Well, let me share a little bit as it relates to why I think what I do, how I do. When I was in dental hygiene school, one of my professors had come to me, and some of you may know the story, but had come to me and said, Janetta, you probably need to find a different profession. And I'm like, why? And she said, because there's going to be a lot of people who are not going to want to have your hands in their mouths. Well, that was foreign to me, and I couldn't figure out why she was saying that. Of course, I went home and told my mom, and my mom was like, you tell her I said, and she did the whole head shake thing. And of course, that was a challenge to me. So when I think about how and why and who's at the table, I finally figured out that I didn't want anybody to go through what I went through with a little bit of racism. And I figured out that I wanted to be able to help others to move forward. So now I am so very intentional about who I hang out with, very intentional about who we invite to the table. For example, the board of directors for the chamber. I have an opportunity to name a few people to the board. I intentionally chose some strong voices, strong women, strong men, strong minorities. I'm very intentional about having industry diversity, not just optic, not just who I see, but skills diversity. I'm very intentional about making sure that the unusual voice is heard, because if I just keep hearing the same ones, we're going to keep getting the same thing. So that's kind of my big deal, particularly for intentional inclusion. If I could wave a wand today, I would have everybody be focus on intentional inclusion. And that's what's going to help us in business and in our personal lives as well.
When you look at the research, it shows businesses who are very intentional about being inclusive and are very diverse those are the businesses that have the most success. They have the happiest customers. They have the happiest employees. It needs to be a part of our culture across all industries. So thank you for doing that. You absolutely have a heart of a servant leader, and somebody to the table and pushing over a chair and making room for them. It has a significant impact, just not on them, others that are in the room, and then generations to come. So thank you.
It is absolutely an economic driver when you're talking about diversity and inclusion. It is a talent retention. I mean, it just, people are coming. The first thing that any young person would say, they are looking for diversity if they're going to move to your city and look for a job. So if we are not doing it in corporate America and looking at diversifying our workforce, we are going to be at the bottom of the band of the economic drive.
Yes. It has an impact across all levels within a culture. And I think sometimes we forget that. So thank you for being so intentional. So
thank you.
I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about what we're celebrating this week with the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. Women were allowed then to vote. And I want to ask you why that is significant to you as a woman, and really, what that means to you. I'd love to hear your insight.
Well, so number one, I'm happy and I'm celebrating the fact that we as a woman, as a female, are 100 years ago. It seems like forever, but we weren't here, but awesome. We made it. And it took a lot of work behind that. It took protests. It took things similar to what's going on now in order to try and change even the racial divide. But one thing about the 19th Amendment that's interesting is while August 2020 is 100 years, it was like 5 decades later for women of color to actually be able to engage in real voting, because what the 19th Amendment didn't do was to keep the state laws from taking over. For example, some state laws you had to have a poll tax, you had to take a literacy test. There were things that kept African Americans from actually voting, and then with the women's suffrage, because they had won, every woman was able to vote. Supposedly, they disbanded that suffrage, and therefore the African American women had to work on their own. They had to struggle to keep going. But here's to make a long story short on that. Look at it. Look at us now. Not only Frederick Douglass once said, slavery is not going to be abolished until every man has a ballot. I say he said man. I'm going to say woman and man. Look at now. We not only have had an African American president, but as of last night, history took place where we have an African American female, a woman, where we couldn't even vote 100 years ago and even more. And now we have an African American female on the ballot as vice president. So the 19th Amendment means a lot more today than it did even yesterday. And I just think I'm happy to be able to witness this.
Well, you are such a role model for so many, Janetta, including me. And I'm so happy to be your friend, as well as watch you from afar and be so proud of all those ceilings that you continue to break, and keep being the first of everything, and continuing to encourage and motivate others. Madam Chair.
Well, thank you very much. And I can't thank you guys enough for inviting me. I wish I could be there, and I am just happy that we're all celebrating women today.
Strong women support each other, right?
There you go.
I got it. Thank you.
I got you.
I got you.
Thank you so much.
Wow, isn't she phenomenal? I told you to get ready for some girl power. That was a lot of girl power. So get ready for more, because now it's my pleasure to introduce you to our live panel. These 5 amazing women have risen above adversity, stereotypes, and the unique challenges of being a woman in today's workforce. With perseverance, resilience, and grit, they've grown into well-respected leaders in our community. They'll talk about how they took the trials they faced and turned them into opportunities and proved just how critical a woman's voice is to the workforce. It's exciting to see women take on more challenges and influential roles, and our panelists are a true reflection of the women that have stepped up to lead the way. Now, if you have questions you'd like to ask the panelists, leave them in the comment section, whether on YouTube or on Facebook, and we'll have a question and answer session at the end of our time together, and we'll pull the questions from those comments. So let's get started. Girl power. First and foremost, I would like to start off by introducing our panel moderator for today, Ms. Colleen Jennison. Colleen currently serves as the Market VP for Cox Communications Kansas, which includes Wichita, Topeka, and 90 other communities across the Cox footprint. She's responsible for ensuring alignment across all of the Cox divisions and to champion the Cox customer and the Cox employee experience in Kansas. She's a longtime community advocate and currently serves on the boards of the Kansas Chamber of Commerce, Rainbows United, and the Kansas Cable Telecommunications Association. And she's the president of my personal board of directors. A fun tidbit about Colleen is that she's known for handing out her cell phone number in the community when anyone walks up to her with an issue about Cox services. I threatened today to put her cell phone number, but I won't do that. She always puts our customers first by personally making sure that issues are resolved and following through. She's a true servant leader. So join me in welcoming my friend and the woman who inspires me and all and truly lives the motto of women supporting women, Miss Colleen Jennison.
Wow, that is an introduction, and I'm honored. I'm excited to be here. Right back at you, Marianne. Thank you for not giving out my cell phone number. But with all of the resourceful women on this program, I have zero doubt that you could find it, and just shoot me an email. But thrilled to be here. There is clearly no shortage of amazing women in our community, and we have several of them with us today. So let's get to know the panelists for today's conversation. Cynthia Cross has been with Cox Business since 2007 and is now serving as the Kansas Outside Sales Director. An active community volunteer, Cynthia enjoys giving back. She's been involved with numerous organizations and currently holds board positions with Women in Cable Telecommunications and Junior League of Wichita. Cynthia moved from Iowa to Kansas after college. She loves spending time with her family and friends on the water, running and exercising with her girl gang and her dogs, and cheering for Iowa Hawkeye football. We'll have to talk about that one later. Casey Faye Edwards is the Chief Marketing Officer for Stephen Enterprises and the Eddie's dealerships. She is the youngest member of the Eddie's executive team. She's also a spokesperson for Eddie's Toyota. During her tenure, she's helped contribute to an over 180% growth company-wide. Casey has a passion for giving back to our veterans and volunteers at the Robert J. Dole Memorial VA Medical Centers. Katie Plank is the Chief Human Resources Officer at Ameritrust Credit Union. In her role, she has been responsible for developing and implementing an onboarding program, retention strategies, and employee engagement initiatives. She also has enhanced performance evaluation process, leadership development, change management initiatives, and employee relations policies. Stacey Ward-Hatton, with her husband Corey, owns Hoppy Young Brewing, a local microbrewery and tap room in the Douglas Design District in Wichita. Stacey works on events, marketing, social media, and business development. Stacey is an active member of the community. She serves as the board president for the Douglas Design District and is also a board member for Dress for Success Wichita. Stacey is passionate about women's issues and volunteers for many event committees and groups. Stacey, along with colleague and friend Renee Duxler, co-hosts a weekly live video podcast called Ceiling Breakers, where they highlight everyday women doing extraordinary things in their communities. Some of you might have seen our very own Becky Heiner participate in that just a week ago. DJ Pennick is a professional experiential learning facilitator who has worked with everyone from high-risk teens to Fortune 100 companies. She's an advocate for learning through play, and has found that experiential learning processes, being interactive, and playing initiatives resonate for better learning. Through interactive team building and a strategic series of activities, she teaches teams how to work better together and discover their truths, to innovate, communicate, and have empathy for one another. She works with leaders to improve their effectiveness through bottom-up leader concepts. She still climbs rope courses and loves jumping on the trampoline with her 3 sons and 7 incredible grandchildren. She is enjoying this season of serving her family. I want to personally thank all of you for speaking to us today. So that we can get to know each of you a little bit better, the first 2 questions are actually going to be for everyone. So, DJ, why don't we start with you? Tell us about a time in your career when you encountered an obstacle that you had to overcome and how it helped shape who you are today.
When I started on the rope course, I started with high-risk kids, anxious to move into corporate. And it was phenomenal, man. There were very, very few women, but I happened to work under 2 specific women who welcomed me to be a woman with them. But as I grew and as I became better at it, I realized that they thought there was 1 seat at the table. And when the second woman began to really attack everything I did, I found out that, maybe I was the problem. So I tried to figure out ways to be, what could I do to prevent these women from feeling like I was a competition or to attack me? I kind of took ownership over my own character. And I just really tried to become a really good character, a very good student of my own character and figuring out what could I do to provide the safest environment for the women that I worked with so they didn't feel like they had to take me down in the process. So I kind of owned the process.
I love that. Yeah, we have to own our process. Absolutely. Cynthia, how about you?
Well, I took a job where there were 11 salespeople and I was the only woman. And if I can set the stage for you, everybody else in the role had 25 plus years in the sales job. And here I come in my early 30s and I'm going to conquer the world and I'm going to kick booty at this job. And let me tell you, I learned real quick that the good old boys club is real and it exists. And man, I was not part of it. I was not welcome. I was not one of them. Meetings were about as painful as getting a tooth pulled without Novocaine. And I lasted for 3 years. They didn't push me out. I just decided that I wanted better for myself. And what I learned from that was sometimes it sucks. Sometimes you just have to put your head down. You have to work hard, persevere. You don't let anybody get in your way. And your mind is a really powerful tool. We are the only ones that can control what we tell ourselves. And we're the only ones that can control what we believe. And at the end of the day, you are the person that gives power to somebody making you feel some way. So don't allow that. It's not always easy. There's days that it was harder than others, but you have to be in control of what you tell yourself and what you believe.
No, that's absolutely, absolutely true. Casey, how about you?
Yes, I love both of those. Mine is a little bit more recent and trying to be relevant with the transition and our team environment working from home. So at the beginning of COVID-19, we worked from home for the month of April. And coming back into the office, there was a big pivot on, there were so many unknowns. What were the risks and leading during that time? I don't know how many people on this call are watching that are managing people, but give yourself a pat on the back because this time is crazy, unprecedented times. And coming back into the office, we had been Zooming 3 times a day and kicking butt, so much butt, and just over communicating, but there were concerns. And so adapting to each and every one of our team members' concerns one-on-one was something that took the obstacle to an opportunity to build trust with our team internally. And so now I'm retraining the brain to every time I hear obstacle to hear opportunity. And it was a great time to become stronger as a leader and take each individual's concerns one-on-one, address them, and become the best leader that we could, and coming back into the office and giving them all the tools that they needed to be successful in their role.
Oh, that's terrific. I'm sensing kicking butt as a theme on this. I think we've had a couple of those. Vicki, how about you?
Well, any woman who has been in the business world for a period of time has probably run into the issue of you're good at your job, you're doing your job, and along comes some young man right out of college, and you're asked to train him so that he can do your job or be promoted to another job. And I remember I was right out of college as well and in grad school, and had that experience a couple of times and could not quite understand, and went to my boss to ask, why is this happening? And found out that I just really had not been as vocal as I should have been. I didn't ask for what I wanted. I didn't make my interest in moving forward, progressing my career known to my supervisor or anyone else that would have had an opportunity to advocate for me. And so that was a big lesson. That's something I think that we'll continue to talk about this afternoon, but certainly just really learned the lesson of speaking up for myself.
Yeah, that's a big one for all of us, finding our voice. I'm excited for some of the questions we have going forward today. Stacey, how about you?
Yeah, so as many of you know, I co-own Hopping Gnome Brewing with my husband. It's a local microbrewery here in town. And when we first got started, we noticed when we first opened, it was pretty clear that everybody just assumed that he was the owner. He's the one that makes the beer, and he was there probably more often than I was at the beginning. I was working full time, as well as working in the tap room. And so there was one time where somebody came in and they wanted to talk to the owner, and I was kind of behind the bar doing something, and one of our bartenders said, "Well, she's right here." And he said, "No, I want to talk to the other owner." And I just kind of like, put my big girl pants on and just said, "Sir, is it a brewing question? Is it, specific to the beer? Otherwise, I can answer any of your questions." And it ended up being just like a question about a T-shirt or something, which I handle all the merchandise and the marketing and all of that. So I was able to speak to the gentleman and I don't know, kind of let it be known to the rest of the room that I was also the owner, and kind of set that tone, because I think if our bartender wouldn't have been talking about women empowering women, if she wouldn't have said, "She's right here," if she would have said, "He's in the back," I would have said, "Yeah, I'll go get him," or "Yeah, he's not available right now." And so what can I help you with is kind of a secondary, instead of coming out as the head of the organization. So I think sometimes we just have to believe in ourselves, and sometimes it takes somebody else sometimes to give us that push, and to just do it and be like, "Yeah, I'm gonna take charge." And I've been taking charge ever since.
Your husband probably said you were taking charge long before then, right? And my husband says that. So BJ, we're going to start this next question. We're going to have you all run through this one as well. But BJ, we'll start with you. What attributes did your mentors have that had a positive impact on your personal and professional growth? And what attributes do you look for in people that you want to mentor?
That is such a great question. I was surrounded by men, and they were brilliant, so brilliant. And I think the thing I want to say about my mentors is that they absolutely did not hold back in any way. They did not hold back. They gave me every ounce of information they had in their brain. They just shared themselves so consistently. They were available. They were quick to train me, to teach me, to bring me alongside, to push me. And so when I mentor, or when I have any opportunity to teach experiential learning to anybody, I give away all my product. I just give it away, because I just feel like that's what they did for me, and that's what I want to do for others. So it's just out of such a grateful heart. I want to give you all these tricks. I just want to pour it out on you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Paying it forward. Absolutely. Cynthia, how about you? Attributes of your mentors and attributes for people you want to mentor.
Yeah, it's interesting because thinking through this, I mean, it makes you, put the pencil to the paper, and there's some attributes that you don't want to follow. And so the positive ones are that they've been very transparent. I don't think you can grow and learn if someone's not willing to share what they're thinking. The worst thing is to wonder, am I on the right path? Or, are they bought in? Additional attributes would be they're very empowering. They don't control, but they're very empowering. They're willing to be vulnerable to what BJ just talked about. They're willing to share some of the secret sauce. And then the other one would be willing to challenge, whether it's themselves standing up for others, whether it's willing to challenge me. We all know that we don't grow when we're comfortable. And somebody that I think is a great mentor is somebody willing to really challenge me. And the other side of that is really interesting because when I first started being a mentor, it was so exciting. It was like, yeah, I'll take anybody. I'll take everybody. And then you learn that sometimes you want them to develop more than they want to develop. And so you start being a little more cautious with who you're willing to take on and what you're willing to do. So really the ones that I want are the ones that want to do the work. They're very transparent as well. They're very driven and they own their development. This is not my job as a mentor. It's their job to own their development. And if they're willing to get uncomfortable and they're willing to do the work, sign me up. I'm all in.
I love it. Yeah, absolutely. Casey, how about you?
Said there, Cynthia, we don't grow when we're comfortable. And that's so true. The best mentors that I've had challenge me. And it's that fire and drive that I look for in mentorees. So that passion, you can learn almost anything, but that fire inside is what I look for in women that I'm like, oh, just come this way and reach my hand out and let's go. And then for my mentors that I've had, I just am so grateful in the fact that time is really the only thing that we can't get back. And for that, I'm really grateful. My mentors that I've had have been coaches, parents, but some of them have just been just unapologetically fearless, and they have attributes that they're just self-motivated and nothing can stop them. And it goes back to both ways of mentors and now mentorees, that fire inside, but with a speck of kind at the bottom of the heart. I love that.
Yeah, that's great. Vicki, how about you?
I agree with the quality of being transparent and challenging you. And I think that can be done in a lot of different ways. One of the women that really sticks out for me as a strong mentor early in my career was someone I would go to, and I would maybe have a problem or an issue that I was trying to figure out. And instead of giving me the answer, she always went through probing questions, making me try to figure it out for myself. And I remember several times thinking, oh, why won't she just tell me the answer? But she was actually making me go through a problem-solving process and thinking for myself and helping me walk through that. And I've always really appreciated the ability to kind of lead someone to discover their own answer, because I think when you learn it that way, it really sticks with you when you discover it yourself. And so I like to work with all kinds of people, but I really like working with those that are curious and they want to learn, and they don't want me just to tell them the answer. They want to figure it out for themselves.
Yeah, that's awesome. Feedback is a gift. I mean, that's how we grow.
Yeah.
Getting uncomfortable and getting the feedback. Stacey, why don't you bring it home for us on this question?
Yeah, well, all of the above. I agree with all of those attributes, definitely getting you out of your comfort zone. And I've been working on that with some of my current staff and just some other women that I've been around. One thing that I've started doing that I realize you can't always get everything from one person. And whether they're a great mentor or not, sometimes you have to as the others were saying, kind of reach out and research and find your own answers. And so I've been really trying to connect people with other people. So if I don't have the answer, if I don't have that experience, I can connect them with someone who does. And so I heavily utilize groups like the Hive, and I'll talk more about that in some of the later questions, other women's groups here, and just other jobs that I've worked at, other, lines of work, anywhere that I can just kind of connect people to get their answers and to learn from.
No, relationships. I mean, really, if you take nothing else away, relationships is the critically important factor in all of this. So that's awesome. Appreciate it. So we're going to dive into our one-on-one questions. And Cynthia, we're going to start with you. What do you think is the most significant barrier to females becoming leaders? And what can we do to break through those barriers?
Well, I'm a little passionate about this, so I hopefully will be calm. But I think there's only one thing, and it's ourselves. I said earlier that we control what we tell ourselves. We control what we believe, and it starts and stops with that. There have been plenty of my bosses, past bosses, coworkers, friends that have said to me, "You're never going to be able to do that. You're not going to be able to get that position. Hey, look at that board. It's all made up of men. You don't have a place in there." And it used to be very frustrating, and I've used that to flip it. And now I let it be very motivating to me. I'm like, watch me. I'm going to go prove you wrong, because I can do anything that I believe I can do. In addition to that, you have to have a voice, though. So when they were talking earlier about Vicky, I believe, was saying that you have to speak up, like you have to make it known. But what we need to do to break through that barrier is don't listen to anyone else. It doesn't matter what anybody else's opinion is. You decide what you want. You find your advocates. There will be plenty of people that don't want to advocate for you. There'll be plenty that do, and you have to do your due diligence. So find them, do the work, stay positive, and go get it. And one of my favorite hashtags is no excuses. Stop making excuses. Own it. If you want something, go get it. And I don't care what is stopping you. Find a way around it. And I have a little story that just drives this home for me. Last night I was working on preparing for this, and I'm at my table. And God love my husband. He's a wonderful man. But he went by and he was asking what I was doing. And so I read him this question. And he started answering it. And I was like, excuse me, what in the world do you think you are doing? You don't have a right to answer this question. And he said, well, I'm just helping you. I want to give my perspective. I'm like, I don't need your perspective. So what just really drove it home for me was that even those that really do have your back and have your best interest, don't listen to them. Like his advice, no, that is not what I'm going to do. So follow yourself. And the other thing I'll add real quick is you don't need a title to be seen as a leader. So stop worrying about I have to have a title or I'm not a leader. No, that's inaccurate. So nothing stops us from being a leader except ourselves, ladies.
Nope, I think the passion came totally through on that. Poor Will. We'll give him some counseling later. But Casey, second to telecom, where it's been, often I have found myself as the only female in a room. The auto industry is significantly not even. So tell us about how you've had to overcome preconceived notions of your auto industry knowledge internally and externally because of your gender.
Oh gosh, yes. Okay. I'm often the only woman in the room at conferences, at regional meetings. I mean, there's everyone in their black stuffy jackets, and then, oh, there's me, in red. And so preconceived notions happen all of the time and will continue to happen. Gosh, yes, men all around the room. But I like to think that you've heard the quote, I'm sure, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react. So I've been with coworkers at trade shows, and we'll walk up to a meeting with a vendor, and the whole time they'll just direct the questions at my counterpart. And typically it's a man, I work in a male-dominated industry, and just firing questions back and forth. And sometimes it's our CFO and we're at a marketing booth or a new technology, and he's like, oh, I don't know. She knows that numbers. And okay, it's, 3 minutes and 20 seconds is our bounce rate, or this many unique visitors, or, having the data there. And eventually there's a pivot with that vendor that goes, wait, this is a male-dominated industry, but she's not just here to take notes, or she's not just here to carry the notebook or something like that. So being prepared helps overcome those preconceived notions. And that's been an obstacle just in a male-dominated industry. And it became an opportunity, because then the vendor will go, uh-oh, I need to rewind here. And you can leverage that and use that to your point, an advantage. And so those preconceived notions and assumptions can be overcome with data. And I think the best look is always being prepared, knowing the data, and being able to speak up too and say, wait, I have confidence. I know that number. No one else here does. Or I'm here. I'm worthy. I don't have imposter syndrome, because some may have overcome that in the past. But just leveraging what you know, not being afraid to speak up, and turning those assumptions into an opportunity are really important.
Yeah, being an expert, there's nothing that gives you better confidence than that, knowing your stuff. And when you know your stuff, you can't fight that. So, Vicki, this has been a really crazy time. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. And we would all love to be in the same room together. Unfortunately, we can't be, but we're grateful for technology. But one of the things that I have read, according to Fortune magazine, approximately 60% of jobs eliminated in the first wave of COVID layoffs were held by women. Mothers have been impacted the most, not only losing jobs at a far higher rate than others, but also more affected by school and daycare closings. I'm sure many of the people on this panel and that have called in have experienced that as well. How can these women and their employers work together to ensure that the pandemic crisis doesn't trigger a generational loss in the workplace equality?
Well, Colleen, you're right. There certainly is a concern about women's earnings in the future due to the pandemic, and not just something that might be of a concern now in the coming months, but decades later, if we aren't working together to solve some of these problems. So I think companies large and small are doing lots of creative things to help the working parents that are in their employ. And I think we all are an example of remote work, right? Because we all have been talking about Teams meetings. We're all on a Zoom type call. And so that's one of the first things that most companies did, was if they could send people home, they sent them home. And lots of companies still working remotely, some all their employees and some as needed. So what I'm seeing here in the Wichita market when I talk to HR colleagues is just a real willingness to kind of take this case by case and look at the employee situation and what are things we can do to help. The schools all around us have different back to school schedules. So we need to be flexible. Can we do something with a shortened work week? Like we have an employee who their child goes to May's school district, and the child's in school Monday, Tuesday, out of school Wednesday, back in school Thursday, Friday. And the middle school kids and high school kids are different versions of that. So could we let this employee work a shortened work week, or let her do some after hours kind of work, those types of things. So I think there's a lot we can do with flexible scheduling, continuing to let employees work from home, but that doesn't work for everybody. A lot of us are in jobs that are serving customers, and we're frontline and we have to be there. And so that's a whole other issue that we continue to look at. Well, can we do some cross training so that we can have this person who needs to be at home answering the phone or doing that kind of thing, and somebody else who'd normally answered the phone, well, maybe they're out in front of the customer. So I think it's all across the board. It's lots of different opportunities to be creative, and who knows? You know, some of this needs to be our mindset in how we think about who does childcare or who helps the kids, because, you know, we tend to typically think, oh, now why is that male employee asking for time off to take care of the sick child, when we should be cheering him for doing that? So maybe we'll come out of this with a whole different perspective that will really move women forward in our workplaces. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, it's been amazing. So it's been a challenging time, and it's been interesting to see the innovation that's come out of this as well. So hopefully we'll see some innovation in that regard too. So Thank you so much. You know, Stacey, this is a two-part question for you. We've been talking about standing up for ourselves. We read all of the time about the discrepancies in salaries between men and women. First, can you tell us what are some tips that can help women negotiate better salaries and benefits? And then could you speak to what steps a company can take to change its culture to help bridge the gender pay gap?
Yeah, well, it's important to do your market research. There are some great websites out there that you can take a look at your position that you're looking at. And of course, it varies a little bit state by state and by experience and things like that, but it can give you a good baseline. There's a Department of Labor website is really good. There's also websites like salary.com and Glassdoor. You can, like I said, use it as your kind of mean or as your like walk away point, but remember to keep in mind, education and training and things like that. And it varies a little bit state by state, but that kind of gives you a baseline. And I think a lot of people don't do that when they go in to a job interview. Another big thing is to never accept an offer right away. So always take your time. This one's hard. I know when I got my first job out of college, I was like, I'll take it. Which, was my first job. But I think since then I had to, take a look at, okay, this is how much experience I have. This is where I need to be. Did some research, sleep. Everybody says, sleep on it. Even if it's your dream job, just take a moment to think about that. Sometimes you're just not going to get to where you want to be, especially in, we're in a pandemic where there's a lot of other factors. But it may be a job that you really want to take, or it may be, you're asking for a raise or something, you're not able to get that. So thinking of non-salary benefits. So, like Vicki was saying, talking about the, working remotely or adjusting your work schedule. Can the company pay for any licenses you might need, trainings, maybe asking for more PTO or a sign-on bonus instead of in lieu of a base salary increase if that's just not going to be possible. The other thing when talking about asking for a raise, once you're in a position, you don't have to wait for an annual review. If there's been a big event that you've been working on or a big sell, anything that shows how awesome you are, you can go ahead and you can go in right after and have that meeting. Sometimes that helps instead of just waiting, it could be 6 months later. And it's like, remember that thing I did, that thing I sold and got us to this. But when you do come to the meeting, make sure that you're prepared. Always have data about how you're making the company better. It's not just an expectation that you're always going to have an increase. That's great if that happens, but it's always making sure you're meeting your goals, exceeding your goals for you, and it's best for your company and your business. So always come to the table prepared. And I would say for companies, doing that market research is really important when starting out and looking for positions, or if there are already people in place that have been there for a while, that's fine. But just making sure there's a baseline, and then keeping it very clear on, if you hire based on experience and education and how you can increase and how often you do bonuses, and that could change obviously, especially in times like now. But just being really clear, having that in your the job description, having that, post that somewhere, having that even in your employee handbook. So there's no question as to, well, this person might make more than this other person, but it's because of the experience, or there's reasons for that. And just try to keep it simple.
Yeah, no, that's great. Marianne, your team will probably be hitting you up after this video conference, hey, look what we did.
Yeah.
So be prepared. BJ, in your experience working with leaders of all levels, what skills and traits do individuals need to develop that will foster an effective and inclusive workplace?
But what I need us to see is, one time I asked my kid, he was a junior in high school at the time, if he would do something. And he said, if I did that, Mom, I'd have to care more. And I went, you know, he is still alive. But how much of that is really true? That if we did things, we just would have to care more. And what I've heard from all these panelists is this competency. And we need to have such competency. We need to be so good at our jobs. And if you are really caring, like I said, I'd have to care more. If we really cared a lot, but you're not competent, you cannot move forward. If you're really competent, but you don't care about people, again, it needs to be both competence and caring. So we tend as women to be a little bit afraid of our soft skills, but really those emotional intelligences, those ability to care more, what does that look like? So I'm just going to give you a couple things I just want you to be more aware of that'll make us so much more effective. The first thing I want you to know or to be really mindful of is your eyes, especially in mask season. But more than that, I really want you to be attentive about your eyes. When you talk to people, be certain your eyes are looking at them when they're talking. If you need to look around while you're getting your thoughts together, that's fine. But when people are talking, they need to know you see them. They will not trust you unless they know you see them. So really be mindful of your eyes. Really look at people when they're speaking. An author says, look at it long enough to know the color of their eyes. So be really mindful to use your eyes, to love people. And even when you just walk into the office or you walk through Walmart or you walk through the grocery store, you have the power with your eyes to really communicate to people they're okay, because people are not okay. So, I mean, just use your eyes very aggressively in a way that allows you to read their face, figure out what they're thinking, what do they need. The next thing I want to do is I want to remind you that people don't hear what you say, they don't see what you do, they know how you feel about them. So change the way you feel about them. I went to therapy once. She said, go home, change the way you feel about them. And I thought, you could do that? So I did. I just went home, changed the way I felt about them. And your face is going to tell people how you feel about them. You may be saying the right things. You may be doing the right things. But if your face is saying, I think you're an idiot, they know, and they know. So I'm just going to tell you to fix your face, because your face is giving you away. And especially in this virtual life, I'm telling you, we have got to lean. We've got to remember that old big lean in thing. While you're fixing your face and you're in a situation you're not really careful that you care much about, your tendency will be to pull back and to kind of cover your own heart. I'm just reminding you the power to lean in. Just lean in, and while you're leaning in, you can absorb the anxiety of what's going on. Just your lean, they're unaware that you're fixing your face, because you're leaning forward and you're fixing your face. You're fixing how you feel about them. I also want to remind you that when you're listening, listen so attentively to what they're saying. Be as present as you can. Try not to be distracted. Try not to be thinking about things that have nothing to do with it. And even don't think about your answer. I want you to be so mindful, so listening to what the person is saying, that when they're done talking, you could do one of two things. You could either say, what I heard you say is, and you could repeat back to them what they said, or you could ask them a question that causes them to just share a little bit more about what they were talking about. If you ask that question that causes them to share more, your question is going to be tied to what they said, and they'll know they were heard. They know they were seen. So these are just little things that will so radically change you. And if you change you, no one can be the same. So I just want us to be really more mindful of others. When people share more, say thank you. Thank you for sharing that. When people share things you don't agree with, thank you for sharing that as you're leaning forward to absorb their anxiety. And And I think what we're trying to be is really clever and witty and smart and brilliant. And really, the best inventions are dull and obvious. The best ideas are the most dull and obvious ideas. And so if you're busy while people are talking, you're busy thinking about how can I be clever and come back with a real good comeback, that is not as effective as if I could say back to you, you know, what I heard you say is this. And can I ask you a question about that? May I have permission to speak into that? So one more thing is really huge, and especially in a work environment, and we all hope we go back to something that will allow us to be face-to-face. But I just want to give you this cool change your work environment technique. And it's when you're talking to people, be sure you're not getting into such a closed conversation that the two of you are just like face to face. And with COVID and 6 feet, we're having to kind of spread out a little bit more. And that's a good thing. Because when you're close in this conversation and you're having this conversation in the workplace and other people see the two of you and you have your faces tight together, all those insecurities at work start coming out. And everybody at work starts thinking, oh man, they're talking about me. So if you can get into a habit, whether you're like you were talking about, Casey, being at a show, or you're just at your own workplace, wherever you are, if you get into the habit of when you have conversations with another person, just keep your body open. It's the difference between a dyad or face-to-face. Are there conversations we should have in private? Oh, absolutely. Have those in private. But the rest of the conversations that we are having in an open place, keep your body open. Your body language will invite them into that process. Your body language is saying, this isn't a close conversation. Your body language is saying, anybody can come in and be a part of this. And I heard someone say earlier, we need more than one mentor. We need to invite people in. We need to come with our competencies. So these are just some little things that if you change you, just change you. No one can stay the same. No one can stay the same if you are different. And even if you just change yourself this much, it's like a plane coming out of LAX and it's heading to New York. But it changes its direction just this much and it sticks with it. You're going to end up in a totally different place. And I think we think in terms of really big radical changes. And instead, I want us just to be thinking about what is one small thing that I could be mindful to do better. How can I be more attentive with my eyes? How can I be sure I'm listening attentively? How can I lean in? How can I invite people into that process? And the last thing I want to do is just tell you, if you're working on something, let's say you're working on speaking up, like Vicki said, I love that. Speaking up, sharing with people, what do I need? Because what we do is we're silent and we grunt and we groan and we slam the cabinet and we think people should know what we need. When in reality, nobody knows what we need. We have to put that into words. We have to share our view. So when you're working on something, I'm working on speaking up, you advertise that change. You tell everybody you know what? I'm really working on trimming down my sarcasm. I'm really working on my face here. I'm really working on listening more attentively and not being distracted in conversations. So whatever it is you're working on, tell everybody. Tell everybody you're working on it, and they will give you feedback whether you want it or not, but you want it. So those are my just practical little things that I believe that you can do at the workplace that would really change that whole environment.
Yeah, that's terrific. Fixing your face, I'm not gonna tell anybody else, but I know that I could work on that occasionally. I would be a horrible poker player. So
we all can.
It's crazy. Hey, Cynthia, why don't you tell me about a time that you have had to yourself or have helped someone else stand up for what is right while overcoming the stereotype that passion or emotion in a woman makes her difficult? And we all know the other words that have been associated with difficult.
Geez, I wonder if I've dealt with this my whole life, Colleen. So this is an interesting one. First of all, the time that I had to do it was when you're in sales long enough, you will end up dealing with an unhappy customer. It just happens. And the one piece of advice that I will tell you guys is whatever you do, you want to be known as the person that is going to do the right thing even when it's hard. Because what that allows your bosses to do is I was able to take a phone call from a customer, and the customer was telling me the story, and there's always two sides to every story. But what the customer was saying, it just didn't add up, because I knew the rep, and I knew that was not how the rep operated. And so that allowed me to defend them. And of course I did my due diligence, but it allowed me to defend them because I knew what I could expect from them. And that really comes from culture and, you know, what you can expect and what you will expect from your team. So always do the right thing, because you want that reputation. You don't ever want your boss in a battle and have them questioning, man, would she not do the right thing? I don't know. But to my point that I started with at first was I've dealt with this my whole life. But to Colleen's point, yeah, if I'm in a meeting and a gentleman would stand up and challenge somebody and say something similar to what I would say, you could hear the dialogue later of, man, he's driven, man, he's a go-getter, man, he's a great leader. But I do it, and then I'm called in and I'm given feedback of, hey, you were a little aggressive, hey, you kind of rub people wrong, you know, hey, pretty argumentative, you can be kind of pushy. So that was really hard for me, because I'm like, I'm only doing what my peers are doing, what other people are doing. And to BJ's point, I got feedback, and I have done a lot of work over the last 5 to 6 years on this topic specifically, because the feedback I got was I was a difficult partner, and people would shy away from dealing with me because I'd just come right at them. I'm like, it's black and white, it's transparent, it's not personal. But that's not how everybody solves things. And so the lessons that I've learned that I would share is always know the facts. And don't ever go into a battle to defend anybody without the facts. You would never go into battle without armor, and make sure you have them. Once you have the facts, don't ever use anything except facts. Have no emotion, because that changes the ball game. Men are able to have dialogue, straight face, no emotion, and we come in and, you know, I get passionate, and then all of a sudden I'm, man, what's her problem? So keep the emotion out of it. Listen. Also, to BJ's point, listen. You don't have to agree, but you do have to listen, and they have to know that you're hearing them, or you might as well not even have the meeting. And I think most importantly for me, what I've learned the most is don't make a knee-jerk reaction. Do not push reply on an email. First of all, don't try to solve it on an email. But second of all, take the night, maybe if you need 2 days, take the time, process, digest, get the emotion out of it. And then you can come back and you can have a calm, professional discussion. And I'm okay now, because people will say, well, we've heard you're tough, but you're fair. That's fine. I'm good with that. So it's something that I've worked on. I'm not done working on it. I'm sure my bosses are probably listening out now going, yeah, you're not done. But it's something I'm aware of, and I'm open to the feedback, and hopefully I'm getting better at it every day.
No, that's terrific. And we all have been there. And I'm a big fan of, instead of the email, picking up the phone, because it's easier to have a conversation when you can hear each other's voices. That's, you know, it's critical. Hey, Casey, how do you envision that the auto industry will change if more women are working in the industry at all levels?
Goodness. The good thing is it has changed a lot since I joined the auto industry. When I first came aboard, all the women were just in accounting or clerical, and we have our first female general manager at our newest store, and that's a really big thing. And we have on our executive team, there's 2 chairs at the table, and I see women coming into our sales roles and managers and finance more and more in the most recent years. A lot of things are changing, and our regional reps, like our GM regional president, is a female. That's really empowering, seeing that transition over the past few years. It's been very recent, and we're still need a lot of work, but it is changing slowly but surely. And I think just more women around the table and leaning in allows us to hear different, unique perspectives. And in the auto industry and the home industry, when purchasing a house, women have 70% of the influence on making the buying decision. And so with more women being internal in the auto industry, we can reflect on what that woman wants and how the decisions are made, because hello, we're making the decisions or influencing them greatly. And I think that it just looks a lot more inclusive. We can speak and cater to what we would want and how we would react and how we speak and understand and listen. So I see a great future for the auto industry and where it's going, and am glad to accept all women that would love to join. We need more of you. Another great thing is the line's really short for the restroom at all of the events. So come on board. Love to have you.
I love that. Yes, I'm very grateful that you all are having influence on cars, because if my husband got to pick my vehicle, I would have a Ford Flex. And while some of you may totally adore that, and he has one, that's just not the kind of vehicle that I want to drive. So, Vicki, what advice would you give to women to prepare themselves for promotion in the workplace?
Well, I think there are a couple of things that women can do, and we've actually talked about a few of them through this past hour. You know, Cynthia talked a little bit about the feedback that she got, and I think that's one thing that's really important for women to ask for feedback and then do something with it. You know, we've all heard, work hard, learn everything you can, keep track of your accomplishments, keep track of the training that you do. But I think it's even more important to look around and ask a trusted coworker or mentor for some feedback on your performance in a meeting or your performance on a project. And if there's someone in a particular role that you would like to be doing at some point, sit down and have a conversation with them. Ask them, what was your path to this? How did you get to this? You know, we did talk earlier about having your voice and speaking up, and I think that's really important as well, that we put what we want into words and we speak up. But I think we also have to phrase that in terms of what does the business need as well. So it can't always, when we're asking for something, just always be about my career, what I want, my promotion. Sometimes you need to step back and frame that as, so how does my progress in my career benefit the company? What business need does that respond to? And I think that's just as important, whether you're asking for salary increases or promotion or opportunities on a project. It's important to think of these things in terms of the business need and how does this help solve a business problem. I think we all want to work for companies where we work together to solve those things. We come together to help one another progress in our careers. And I'm going to pick on men for just a little bit, if that's okay. Most men feel like they're prepared. I look at applications, not every day, but I look at applications in our system, and I'm always surprised at the young man who really has a year of experience doing something, and they apply to be the auditor or a branch manager, and boy, it's like, wow, they've got a lot of confidence, don't they? And they even write some really great explanation as to why they'd be good in that job. And you just don't see women filling out applications that way. They just don't seem to have that same level of confidence. I think sometimes we feel like we need to be over prepared, and maybe we don't need to be. Maybe we need to have the confidence and faith in ourselves and take that next step. Put yourself out there. So those are the things that I've observed about young women in the workplace and how to progress your career. So I'm sure there's other suggestions too on the panel, and maybe we'll get to hear some of those as well.
Yeah, no, we've heard that, right? So if there's a job that's available and a man looks at it and there are 5 qualifications and they have one, they're all over it. If a woman looks at it and has 4 of the 5, we still hesitate to throw our names in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we've got to get better at that. We have to do that. Stacey, you know, one of the things that we hear oftentimes is that, you know, women can be the worst critics of one another. And we have to be each other's, you know, best support. How do you ensure that women around you are building each other up and rising together?
Yeah, well, through my Facebook Live and podcast called Ceiling Breakers, my friend Renee and I highlight just ordinary women doing everyday women doing extraordinary things in our community. And she's getting ready to move to another town, so we're going to be not just doing that in Wichita, but statewide. And so that's something that we have used as and doing that virtually now, of course, with the new normal for everybody, and just being able to highlight recently women who have been rising up during the pandemic, or maybe those who might need a little more support right now. We know, especially in nonprofits and like we were talking about earlier, women who have been hit harder in a lot of the layoffs. And so I think the other thing is I've always been really active in a lot of like lunch and learns and events for women, like this was supposed to be, and you're all watching this now. So I'm hoping that you continue to participate in events like this, you know, do anything that's offered. And sometimes it's easy to, especially if it's a free event, it's easy to say, oh, I'm gonna go to this event and then not call in and not show up. But definitely continue to stay engaged any way that you can. The social distancing thing is still a thing, and so any way that we can be there for each other. And I've been seeing a lot more lifting each other up on social media. And for some people, they need to take a break from social media because there's a lot of negativity, and just obviously just the news is just very overwhelming. So if you have to take a break from social media, make sure you're calling a friend or reaching out. Or I noticed people have been sending cards more, kind of going back to some of those old ways of communication. So that's something I've been practicing. And I wasn't so good at first. When this all started, I was very kind of closed myself off. I didn't want to. I said, oh, well, there's nothing in person to do, so I'm not going to really talk to anybody. And I had to quickly realize that that wasn't good for me. That wasn't good for my community of women. And so just keeping that in mind, that we're all here today supporting each other and lifting each other up. And we just have to keep doing that any way that we can.
Yeah, especially during this time of COVID, check on your extrovert friends. They are not doing all right. They are not well. Have a FaceTime or a Zoom FaceTime or whatever happy hour and see each other. Hey, BJ, we have heard a lot of great takeaways throughout today's conversation. I just have thoroughly enjoyed all of this time with you. We have a very diverse audience on today's call, from top executives to teenagers just setting out to find their place in the world today. What do you think we should be mindful of and intentional about as we pursue equality?
I love that question. What should we be intentional about? And I want to just remind every woman, you matter. You matter so much. You matter. What you do matter. There's so much to contend with. There's so much going on around us that we sometimes just we think we can't make a difference. I don't know if you've heard the old adage about the kid who was on the seashore and it was covered with starfish, and he's throwing starfish into the ocean, and this old man comes by and he goes, oh, son, there's so many of them. You can't make a difference. And the boy said, it mattered to that starfish. And so I think that we need to just, sometimes things get so big we do nothing. We need to do something. You matter. You matter. Do something. Do something. And the thing I want you to understand, and I love a book by a gal who started to go blind. And as she was going blind, her name is Jennifer Rothschild, she said, I learned one thing, that confidence is a feeling, but courage is a choice. So she came to realize that if I wait to feel confident, I probably won't do much. But if I'm willing to be courageous, I'm probably not going to feel like this, but take the next step, do the next thing, do it afraid, just do it afraid. So look more for opportunities to be courageous than just confident. I think I want to address something that's just we've talked a lot about, and I think it really was something that I heard with, I think it was Cynthia about, oh, we're going to be called this dominator, or that you see this tendency to go from damsel to dominator. And I grew up in this home where my dad was such a dominator, my mom was such a damsel, and she'd withdraw and she'd withhold and she'd avoid everything, and she wouldn't share her ideas and she wouldn't give any of her insights or thoughts. She was always pulling back. And yet my dad was coming from the other side, and it had to be his way, and he was pressuring everybody, and his ideas were the best, and he manipulated and he controlled and he dominated, and it was almost bully and withdrawal and over is, and what I have learned since is that we have this tendency just to flip from withdrawal to dominant. We move from this passive to aggressive so quickly. And it's because passive and aggressive are the same thing, just different. Passive is not true to yourself. Aggressive is not true to others. So what we have to see is that the opposite of passive and aggressive is assertive. Assertive is that ability to speak up and to share my ideas. Assertive is my ability to invite somebody else into the process. Assertive is that ability to be, to clarify, to make suggestions, to have a discussion, to create a safe environment. It's the thing about assertive people is they accept it. It doesn't have to be your way. You accept that difference. You allow others to have feelings and ideas, and you use integrity, this integrity to be true to you while being true to others. So when I was able to see that I would go in a minute from damsel to dominator, like, how did I flip so fast? It's because they were really alike. But when I would go from damsel to speaking up for myself, or dominator to seek to understand, and I learned that difference of what is assertive behavior and how do I do it. And so in the introduction, you talked about me being what is this bottom-up leader? I think when leadership isn't a title, leadership is an opportunity. And I love that comment made today. And I just think we need to not think about top down, it has to be my way, but learning to be a leader that is like a bottom up. When I'm really confident and I'm really well prepared and I'm really, I use the word courageous, when I'm taking that action of courage, I can come under and make others great. And the people that are closest to the problem, they always have the best inventions. So how do I come under people and make them great? And I think we're in a world of hard conversations. Do we agree? We have to have. I am not going to be able to personally get rid of racism, but I certainly can address it with my uncle. I maybe can't change how women feel in the workplace, but I certainly can address someone who is being very offensive. So not being afraid, being courageous enough to have those hard conversations and to come under and to appeal and to say, this is what going back to that attentive listening. Okay, we have enough relationship that I have a right to speak in here. I built enough relationship to have a different opinion, and humbly coming to have my own mind changed. Like somebody's going to share a view, and do I come to have my mind changed, or do I come just to win every argument? And I love when Vicki was talking about that feedback model. When we ask people for feedback, we have to say thank you. We can't say, oh, well, you just don't understand. And we start arguing with them about their feedback. If you ask somebody for feedback, your answer is thank you. This is not a conversation to win. You listen to what they say. A lot of feedback is garbage, but I'm telling you, you're going to hear a really good feedback, and it's going to change your life. So if you're in that habit of saying thank you, thanking people for their opinion, getting permission to ask. May I comment on that? Just had a conversation on Friday that was a train wreck. And everything in me was boiling, and I was leaning in, and I was trying to absorb that conversation. And I decided if I was silent, I was really allowing there to be some real white supremacy in this conversation. I could not be silent because silence would be agreement. But I had to appeal. I had to come under and say, okay, this is what I heard you say. Now, may I have a comment about that? And if they keep talking, no, they don't want to hear your comment. But I ask again, do you mind if I just share a different view? Because the first to present their case seems right till you hear the other side. So are we presenting the other side? Are we coming under? Are we appealing to people? And it's not to attack and it's not to dominate, but it's to invite and to allow people to think differently than they are. And let them leave mad, let them leave not affected, but they're going to think about what you said. But if you don't stand up and you don't speak truth and you aren't true to yourself, then I think you're doing, it's just unjust. It's a lack of equality. It's a lack of equity. It's a lack of discovery. So these are just some common things, that common little sense things that I think all of us were trying to say today. You know, be courageous, be bold, and yet listen attentively, seek to understand, make others in your presence really enjoy that they get to work with you and that you made them a better person.
Yeah, no, that's tremendous. Confidence is a feeling, courage is a choice. And that's an amazing takeaway for me. And I couldn't agree more. Your title does not make a difference in your ability to be a leader. In fact, my father used to tell me, he was in human resources in his career. He said the true test of a great manager is when the people that they managed succeed them and go on to do bigger. This has been an amazing conversation with such a group of dynamic women. I want to thank all of our panelists for their insight. And now it's time to open the discussion to the audience. So if you have a question for any of our panelists, and you have not already done so, please post it in the Facebook or YouTube comment section, and we'll try to get to as many of these as time allows. Okay, so let me go here so I can get my questions. All right, Taylor Oakes asks, have you ever been so discouraged you wanted to quit, but you didn't? And what made you change your mind? Anybody? Oh, Vicki?
Yeah. I worked for a company once that was acquired and merged with another company. And not only was I so discouraged, I had a box next to my desk. And about every day I would start to throw everything in the box because I was quitting that day. And then I would kind of calm down and take everything out of the box. And I think one of the things that really helped me get through that time was to realize, you know, this is just a period of time and that this will pass. We can get through this. You know, having someone to talk to, a partner that you work closely with at work, to be able to figure out solutions. And this is a difficult time right now. And I think a lot of people probably are feeling very discouraged and isolated. And it's important for all of us to reach out and try to do what we can to move through this, because we will. It's just might be another year or so, I think.
Agreed. That's good.
And to add to that, Vicki, I would say you have to have a lot of introspection there. Are you thinking about quitting because it's not a good fit for you? Or are you quitting because that's not a good manager? Because often people quit the manager, not the position.
Yeah.
And so to do some introspecting there, like, why are you staying? Are you passionate about it? And I'm reading the book Untamed by Glennon Doyle right now. And if you're not reading it or you haven't read it, it's a really good one. She says in there, if you have the choice to let yourself down or let someone else down, make sure you always make the choice to let the other person down and remember what's important to you. So are you in the right seat? Are you doing something that you're excited about? Are you passionate about it? Is it, you know, aligned with your career? Because that manager may not be there forever if that's the key that you're upset about. But the truth usually always floats there. But if you love your job and you want to stick with it, like, that too shall pass. And we do have seasons in our career that we're discouraged by certain things and the ball is not rolling in the right direction, but look at that obstacle and make it an opportunity, to go back to that from earlier today, because if you look for the good, there's always the good, and see how you can, get more responsibilities and pivot and use that energy for good.
Colleen, I would just add one thing. I totally agree. Find the opportunity, but sometimes you just have to embrace the suck. Like sometimes you just have to say, okay, I just got to get through it. Like I will eventually find the good in this. I will eventually understand why I had to go through this, and I will understand the opportunity. But right now, I just got to embrace it. Like this is going to suck maybe for the next 2 months, and I'm going to be okay, and I will get through it. And it's not always going to be easy, but you just have to be willing to just go and persevere and not let anything take you down.
Yeah, no, that's true. Good nuggets. There's a lot of good nuggets from today. I'm going to have to make a poster. The good news, the good words. Do we have another question? Question for the panel from, you took it away from me, Chris. You gave it to me and then you took it away. All right. From Rebecca Page 00. Question for the panel: in the age of Me Too and Time's Up, what new things are companies doing to combat harassment in the workplace, and what can we do? Good question. Any takers? It's a tough one.
It is a tough one. I guess since I'm HR, I will attempt to address it, but everybody else jump in. One of the things that we did as a company, and that I've seen a lot of other companies do as well, is to, number one, do some training. And because I think sometimes there are things that that are not intended to be harassment, but can be a microaggression, like asking women to take notes or run and get the coffee or that kind of thing. And so those are just little pieces of not necessarily harassment, but it does chip away at morale and esteem. And so we've done some things to train our associates so that they understand the big things, the big rocks of you don't say that joke or those words, and also just the little things that can make the workplace difficult. So I think as after Me Too, I think a lot of companies were doing that kind of training and holding people accountable to it as well. So that's unfortunately I've had to be involved in several of those kinds of situations where I've had to go and ask a lot of questions and make a decision about whether somebody still worked for us or not. And when you do find it, you can't tolerate it, and sometimes that means you make a hard decision, but it's really important to hold everyone accountable to those standards.
I would say there's some great organizations here that help with training. The Wichita State Office of Diversity and Inclusion is a really good one. We know a lot of people, especially if you're in that situation where you want to offer some kind of training or you're not sure where to look. There's some great resources, and a lot of them are a little to no cost here in the community.
Yeah. No, and it can't be tolerated, and I think that's the key component is no tolerance policy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have another question? Julianne Burgett, we've talked about men stepping up in the home, but how would you recommend approaching those conversations? I'll start. I'll answer a question. I think it's critical to be able to have those conversations regardless. That talk where you have the conversation about we're both busy or we both have this going on and we need to figure out how we're going to manage the other pieces of life, right? So, I can speak from experience there when we both had incredibly busy careers. I'm going to need you to help me do this and I can help you do that. And you find your balance, right? But I think it 100% goes back to what all of you women were talking about earlier today. And that is you have to speak up. Because we can also not expect people to read our minds. That is not ever going to happen. But I think if you have the honest dialogue, regardless, I think that's the first step.
There's a great book called Drop the Ball by Tiffany Dufu, and it's a great book, especially if you're like to be kind of a control freak about things and you like to control the chores and the laundry and the meal prep and you like things done your way. It's a great book about kind of what you were saying about people can't read your mind. Sometimes people have to be asked to do things, and sometimes when you kind of lay out, this is what you're going to do this week, and this is what I'm going to do, it may not be done how you would have done it, or it might not be done when you wanted it done, but just making those things clear. And I've had those conversations with a lot of my friends about, especially with the pandemic, about, okay, sometimes you have to ask, and you can't just, because we say, oh, well, it's just easier if I just do it myself. Well, if we think that way, and I think we all think that way at certain times, we're always going to be doing it all ourselves. So great book if you struggle with that control issue.
Repeat the book again.
It's called Drop the Ball. It's by Tiffany Dufu.
I want to answer from a fail. Can I do that? I'm in an fail, an epic fail. And I call it my slamming the cabinet doors. We have a big meal in our home, and we are food people. We love food. And before you know it, there's nobody to do the dishes. And so I'm in the kitchen and I'm slamming doors and they're all wherever they want to do with doing whatever. And I'm thinking, man, if I slam another cabinet, they'll all know mom's pissed. And they're going to come help me. And we had to just speak in a straightforward manner. That false harmony of pretending it's okay. So we just called it, okay, nobody gets to do anything until the dishes are done. And so there were 5 of us. And do you know, even to this day, one of the most fun times is after we have all 14 of us in a dinner, and my husband uses every pan we have all discovered. So I love that nobody's here, but we all clean up. And it was just fun to call it. Laundry was done by everybody. Things had to be done by everybody. But we turned it into a pan and we called it. And it really came from me slamming cabinets. So again, no one can read your mind. You think everybody should know what that cabinet slam is, but really it's our responsibility to invite people into the process. Again, that assertive behavior. Tell people what you need and ask them how we can do this together as a team.
And I do think it's really important, if you're a manager and you have a couple of young men who work for you, and one of them calls in one day and says, my child's sick, I need to stay home. Don't say, well, why is it your wife doing that? I've actually heard that said before. And, we're discouraging them sometimes from stepping up and helping with raising children, not childcare. They're raising children. And I think it's really important for organizations to be supportive when a young man wants to take parental leave to be at home with a new baby or an adopted child, or they need to, maybe they are the ones that need to stay home and help homeschool through the pandemic. So I think it's important we don't stigmatize them and encourage their participation.
I don't know, BJ, if you had been slamming cabinets, I might have run further away instead of coming. How about another question for our panel? So from Jen Ray up in Omaha, speakers, what are the best questions you've asked your mentors?
I'll go there. The best comment I ever heard about questions is often in our job as facilitators, we don't know what questions to ask because that's what we need to do. I think it was somebody who said their mentor just asked questions. They facilitated them. Again, I think it was Vicki. They facilitated them. They asked better questions so that they can, and I think the best way I learned to ask questions, the facilitating type of workplace, was to learn to ask what kind of questions would I want to be asked of me. in this situation, what do I wish people were asking me? And I think it's that simple, that it's the idea of, what do I wish was being done? Well, maybe I'm supposed to be doing it. What do I wish people were talking about? That's your question. Like, what do I wish people were asking me right now? And I think those are the best questions. Learn to ask better questions of yourself, and then you'll learn to ask better questions of others.
Great. I always like to add also, what do you wish you would have known when you started out with your first mentor program? You know, what do you wish you would have known? And then maybe just the, you know, what are the couple really good things you've learned across your mentor experience?
So good.
Yeah, excellent. Others? Do we have maybe time for one more question for the panel? All right, Jason Wilson, for the fellas in the room, how can we be better partners for you in the workplace? Jason, you're a good partner in the workplace, but other advice?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I think if you're asking that question, you are leagues ahead of a lot of men in the office. So kudos to you. And, you know, being better partners in the workplace, like, don't be scared to ask difficult questions. And, you know, when you don't know and you want to know, that's the best step to getting to a comfortable place to have those difficult conversations of, oh, did you hear that the other day? Or does this bother you? Or is this okay? You know, it just takes one conversation, and then you can run back to the cooler and spread it all around. Like, this is the right way to approach it. And I found out how now by having, you have that one bestie in the office or that confidant that you can go up to and say, are we doing this right? And I think that's important to raise those questions and hit them head on, and then take it back and say, hey, self-policing each other right here, guys, that's not cool.
Yeah, and I would just add that the willingness, like I know Jason, and I think the willingness to come up and say, hey, you need to think about it from this perspective, because sometimes we get spun up, and I'll be, you know, in a tizzy about, I already gave an example of some things that my husband can do that drive me nuts. And just to have somebody willing to say, hey, time out, he didn't mean it that way. You're coming at it from a different, you know, from the wrong angle. That perspective is very helpful to me as well.
I love that. Yeah. Fixing our own face, right?
Yeah. Can I add one more? I would love the question, what do you need from me? How often could we just say to somebody, what do you need from me? Think about it, put it into words. I'll come back to you, but what do you need from me? Because I think we need to figure out what do they need and listen attentively and seek to understand and figure things out. But that has been a powerful question. We learned that with high-risk kids, just to say, what do you need from me right now? And I can step up and do that for you. So, and I think, again, it comes back to leaning in close enough just to absorb some anxiety. But I think sometimes we just need a friend at work. I would recommend that we have a friend at work that we can bounce ideas off of and share our concerns when we think, how did I do there? And you're getting that good feedback, but that friend who will tell you, you're okay. You're okay. You're doing great. I love what you did. So keep those friends at work. Don't isolate yourself.
I love that. Well, I hate to see this come to an end, but unfortunately, that's all the time we have with each other today. So I want to thank our audience for submitting questions, and I hope each and every one of you were inspired and motivated during our conversation today. I know that I've got some amazing takeaways that I intend to put into action, and it's just been an honor to share the virtual stage with everybody here. So now I'm going to turn it back over to our host, Marianne Balbo.
Awesome. Thanks, Colleen. And thank you, ladies, for sharing. Wow. Such great insight. I took a lot of notes. Okay. And just a few to share that are top of mind. Give it all away. Sharing the secret sauce with those you mentor or anyone who asks. I love that. We don't grow when we're comfortable. True. Fix your face. We heard that a lot. I think that's in a song too. Be prepared. Being prepared overcomes skeptics on your qualifications. Ain't that the truth? And then to go along with COVID, stay 6 feet apart. Excuse me. Body language can invite others into the conversation. And then my favorite word, advertise. Advertise your change and prepare for feedback. And then say thank you. Do the right thing, even when it's hard. And then confidence is a feeling. Courage is a choice. Yeah, that's a good one. And then lastly, you matter. I feel so inspired and learned so much. We truly are better together. And better together is Cox Media's mission and something we strive to live by every day. I remember clearly early in my career when women didn't even have a seat at the table. Then it was counted as progress when a single seat was occupied by a woman. 1 seat. And women began to compete for that 1 seat. Compete with each other. In my opinion, and even as very young in my career, I knew that that wasn't progress. We didn't behave as teammates or sisters. And if we truly want to champion inclusion and diversity and empower women, we need to work together. We need to do more. We need to pave the way. We need to guide others on that way, reaching down and lifting others up. And as you climb, lift. So reaching over and keeping each other safe. Our job should no longer be to get that 1 seat at the table. We need to get it, go carry in some more chairs, scoot over, and create room for each other. And finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the power of our vote on the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage. To gain the right to vote, women came together en masse, protested, and fought tirelessly. It would not stop until they prevailed. Women who were ridiculed, belittled, and abused for wanting to exercise the basic but all-important right to have a say in their own future. We don't just owe it to ourselves to vote this season. It's our duty to honor those women who came before us and stood up to the enormous pressure of a society that didn't want to change. We must honor them by casting a ballot and be an active participant in shaping our nation, our state, and our local communities. So it's not my business who you vote for or why. I just care that you vote. So once again, thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us today. We hope you feel uplifted and inspired and empowered after this conversation. And please remember to be a flamingo in a flock of pigeons. Thank you, everyone. Go vote.